5 years ago, the Royal Tropical Institute founded a company in Mali to produce biodiesel from jatropha oil. The oil comes from nuts that grow on bushes planted by small farmers in West Africa. It seemed that the planting of the trees could be financed through the sale of carbon credits. There was already a buyer, but that buyer could not buy all the credits that would become available. Rough calculations showed that the revenues would be enough to pay the farmers for planting those trees and develop their communities. So the CEO of the company asked us to help him out with selling the credits. And he'd already found a buyer in the United States, and we just needed to finalize the contract. But my intuition told me something wasn't right. If it sounds too good to be true, probably is. And that turned out to be true, because when I saw the price that were offered, they were only half of what we expected. And I realized quickly I needed to understand the market better and speak to experts and look for information to really negotiate better with the buyer. And that's when I discovered how complex it all is. After months of research, it became clear that it would take several years and 100,000 to 300,000 euros to get the certification needed to sell more credits. On top of that, the revenues were going to be much lower than expected, because both the prices and the amount of credits were much lower than estimated. This meant that the risks for our institute were simply too high. So I had no other option than to tell the CEO of our institute and the CEO in Mali that we would have to give back the assignment to sell the credits. I did advise them to look for partners that had the capital and experience to invest in certification and finance tree planting for a few years until the income from carbon credits would start flowing. But we were obviously disappointed. We also felt, though, that we needed to make something with all the information I had gathered. I'd come across so many people who were just as frustrated as I was with the lack of concrete information, the overly complex terminology, and they were all so tired of all those project developers and other middlemen who promise to do all the hard work for you, but in the end they don't really have the experience or the customers to really help you out. That's why we decided to share our experience in a book. We wanted to do something with the knowledge we had gathered and save entrepreneurs from the frustrating search for information that we've had. So I recruited Roger to help me gather the information needed to make it a practical guide for most carbon credit projects. But even with 2 people, it took us several months of hard work to finish it. Until the last moment we discovered new information. But finally we managed to finish it. For most people in the world, it is clear we need to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to halt climate change. And carbon credit projects can be one of the things that can help.
Well, the idea seems simple. Let's take forestry as an example. If I plant trees, I can calculate how much CO2 they absorb. I can then get a carbon credit for every ton of CO2 absorbed. I can then sell these credits to someone else who can compensate for their CO2 emissions. Well, that sounds simple, right?
It's a little bit more complicated than that. For example, there are many different rules and regulations, a lot of different actors, and more than a dozen different certification standards. Unfortunately, it's difficult to find all the information you need in a language you understand.
Right, so that's why we've written a beginner's guide to developing carbon credit projects. In this book, you'll be able to find out what carbon credits are, how to produce them, what influences their price, and where and how to sell them.
And we will also tell you how to estimate how much money you can earn with carbon credits, who the different players in the industry are, the different steps in developing a carbon credit project, and how to choose a certification standard.
The book is relevant to many different types of projects, including small-scale projects in developing countries, forestry and biofuel projects. You can buy the book online or download a free copy.